the enemy to minimise casualties from rifle fire. They are experts in this field, flicking their shields forward so they can't be seen, using the long grass as they advance forward. However, we must bring them under fire. Perhaps we will wait to the more effective range of 800 yards. Now, you lot there are considerably less distance away than 800 yards. Could I ask you to just move into the match here, please? Because we are about to do our best to shoot down those 2 bits of blue delft in the window there. Maybe they're souvenirs from the Boers. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a look at the Martini Henry in action then. As I said, it's a 4.5 calibre breech loading rifle. Churchy, can you step back 2 paces, please? Let's look at how we use the Martini Henry. Over to you, Corp.
Volley firing. Enemy sighted, 400 yards. Ready?
Now, Churchy there has called the shots, literally. He's given the men their orders, 800 yards, 2 volleys to be fired. Now, you'll observe that the men have dropped their levers, which opens the breech. 1 4.5 calibre brass cased round is fed all the way into the breech. He then closes the lever up. The cocking lever on the side of the weapon here indicates it's ready to fire, just in case in the press of action Atkinson forgets if he's loaded or not. And the men, having heard the order for 800 yards, adjust their sights for a shot at 800 yards. The last thing they do then is to look up and decide where they're going to place their shot. The next bit is loud. I'll get out the way.
Present. Ready.
Now, you'll observe there, ladies and gentlemen, that no actual fire order's given. In the film it's all fire, isn't it? We don't do fire, not for a couple of years. The reason for that is the musketry manual says that on the order present, up comes the rifle, the soldier picks his target, aims at it, and after 2 beats of low slow time, he lets fly. Every soldier will do that. It is thought that during the Zulu War, those accomplished warriors, realising that the shot was going to come in 2 beats of slow time, learnt what 2 beats of slow time was and hit the deck just before we delivered our fire. So after the Zulu War in the Sudan, for example, we do give that order, fire! And then they don't know when it's coming. The officer might wait 2 seconds, 2 beats of slow time, or 3, giving his men slightly longer or less, depending on how desperate the situation's becoming. Right, let's have that other volley.
Present.
Now, I needn't tell you, ladies and gentlemen, about the courage of the Zulu warriors that were attacked in the face of that fire. The Martini is a savage weapon in the hands of men that know how to use it. That 4.5 bullet, just to give you a rough idea, is about 3.5 to 4 times the weight of a .303 rifle bullet. It's soft lead only. If it hits you in an extremity, it'll probably take the extremity off, head, arms or legs. If it hits you in the torso, if it hits bone, it'll flatten out, smash the bone badly. Horrible wounds, horrible wounds. Mercifully, most of them resulting in death, because doctors would have to be very skilled to deal with the trunk wounds from a Martini Henry rifle. We would learn all about being on the receiving end of this, because in the First Boer War, a couple of years later, the Boers used Wesley Richards Martinis on our chaps. Right, up you get, Atkinson, rest that knee. So, the enemy force is closing fast. They can move very quickly over the terrain, and the musketry manual says we will not waste our fire by blazing away into clouds of white smoke that's caused by the battalion volley firing. The manual says let the smoke clear, let the men pick their targets individually and shoot them down. So, slow, steady shooting for the Martini. Now, the other question you're going to ask me, I know you are, is how quick can it shoot? Aren't you? How quick can it shoot? Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. prompts are pretty obvious though, aren't they? Really? Yeah. I'll tell you how quickly it can shoot. In our own tests, lying on the ground with ammunition to hand, proper combat loaded ammunition, 13 rounds in 1 minute. 13 in 1 minute. But you would never shoot at that speed in any actual encounter. Slow, deliberate, steady firing until the enemy are almost upon you. At Rorke's Drift things were different. Get them in as quickly as you can, get them off. Martini is a brutal bedfellow. She recoils very hard into your shoulder, and after a few rounds of fire she gets particularly hot. So, because it has no safety catch, when you move forward at the trail arms. Demonstrate trail arms, lads. Now if you've got a red hot barrel, that's going to burn the web of your hand quite badly. Injuries received from using the Martini are burnt web of the hand, blood blisters in the palm where the lever catches you, bruised shoulder, bruised nose and face. It's quite a brutal gun to shoot. Its recoil isn't much more than a 303 would be a few years later, but at the time it was considerably sharper than the weapons that preceded it. The old veterans in South Africa will use cowhide or leather to make wraps at the breech end of their arms so they can still move at the trail and protect their hands on the move. They'll soon learn how to prevent the blood blisters using the lever quite carefully. And at Rorke's Drift, with a heavy firing there, soldiers will shoot from both shoulder to rest one or the other. But the rifles will still become very, very hot, and they become harder to use with every shot. Every shot fired leaves black powder deposits down the barrel. Those black powder deposits layer on layer on layer, so that round is causing more and more and more recoil the dirtier it gets. So it's a fairly brutal gun to use. But it's less brutal for these guys than those guys. And if those guys are now within 400 yards, they're in a very bad place. Because the Martini Henry has a ladder sight which when raised operates it from 1300 to 500. At 400 the ladder's down, you are now shooting on the sight bed. You can have a close look at this later. On the sight bed, Martini is very accurate. It can easily sharpshoot a man at 400 yards and less. Today, shooting one at 200 yards, you'll quite easily attain a group of an average large dinner plate without difficulty. It's quite accurate. It was then, they still are now. So, within 400 yards, the officer might consider that slightly more rapid shooting is appropriate, yet he doesn't want to blot everything out with smoke, so we go over to independent firing as quickly as the men can manage, cause the biggest toll on the enemy that they possibly can, and thin them out before they get to close quarters if they are going to. So let's have a look at some gratuitous independent firing.
Three rounds independent fire. Ready? Five rounds independent fire. Ready? Firing commence.
These rounds are blank, obviously, ladies and gentlemen, so the recoil is much less than it would be with a ball in there. Get a lather on there, 200 yards or less now. Watch your sights, 200 yards now. $100 yards, get a lather on. Cease firing. Too late because they have arrived.